There are two mountains at the center of the Bible, and everything about the difference between them tells you what the Sermon on the Mount actually is. The first mountain is Sinai. When God came down onto it to give his law, the whole mountain shook. There was thunder and lightning, a thick cloud, smoke billowing as from a furnace, a trumpet blast so loud the people trembled. And God gave the strictest possible instruction. Put a boundary around the mountain, and do not let anyone touch it. If even an animal crosses the line, it must be put to death. The law was holy, and it came wrapped in terror, delivered from a distance no human being could cross, written by the finger of God onto cold slabs of stone. The message of Sinai was clear before a single commandment was read. This God is holy, and you cannot come near. Centuries later, there is a second mountain, and it could not be more different. No thunder, no smoke, no boundary line, just a grassy hillside above the Sea of Galilee, and a young Jewish teacher with no official credentials who looks out at a crowd of farmers and fishermen and beggars and the sick, and instead of keeping them at a distance, he sits down right in the middle of them, close enough to touch, and begins to speak the heart of God's law, not from behind fire, but face to face. And that is the whole secret of this sermon, hidden in its geography. At Sinai, the law was thundered onto stone from far away. On this hillside, the same law is spoken gently from the middle of the crowd, and it is about to be pressed all the way off the stone and into the human heart, and finally, into a person. The Sermon on the Mount is what happens when the God who once could not be approached comes near enough to sit down beside you and show you what he was always after. And what he was always after is the thing almost everyone misses about this sermon, because it has been misunderstood in two opposite ways for 2,000 years. Some hear it as a pleasant collection of moral advice. Be humble, be kind, don't judge, love your enemies. A gentle philosophy that good people admire and no one particularly obeys. Others hear it as a hammer, a set of demands so impossibly high that its only purpose must be to make you feel crushed. Both are wrong. This sermon is not a self-improvement plan, and it is not a suicide note for your self-esteem. It is a portrait, a description of what a human life actually looks like once the kingdom of God has moved in and taken over the heart. It is the constitution of a new kingdom painted in the colors of ordinary life. And underneath that, as we will see by the end, it is a portrait of one particular face. So let us climb the second mountain and listen to the whole thing, from the first word to the last. Notice first what the crowd noticed. Matthew tells us at the very end that when Jesus finished speaking, the people were astonished because he taught them as one who had authority and not as their scribes. Their teachers always quoted other teachers. Rabbi said this or that. This man quoted no one. Over and over he would say, "You have heard that it was said, but I say to you," setting his own word above the accumulated tradition of centuries, even reaching back behind the words of Moses to their true intent. No prophet had ever spoken like that. A prophet said, "Thus says the Lord." This man spoke as though the words were simply his to give, and the posture said it too. He sat down to teach, which in that world was the posture of a king issuing decrees, a judge handing down rulings. Before he says anything at all, the scene has made a quiet, staggering claim. The king has taken his seat, and he is about to describe the life of his realm. And the way he begins that description tells you immediately that this kingdom runs on a logic completely opposite to the world's. He does not open with a demand. He opens with a string of blessings. We call them the Beatitudes. And the very first one is the doorway to everything else, so it has to be understood correctly, or the whole sermon collapses into moralism. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The poor in spirit are not the impressive, the disciplined, the spiritually advanced. They are the ones at the bottom, the people who know they are empty, who have no righteousness to show, who come to God with nothing in their hands and no case to plead. And to those people, Jesus says, the kingdom already belongs. The door into everything that follows is not marked reserved for the worthy. It is a low door, and you have to stoop to get through it, and you can only stoop if you have stopped pretending you are tall. Which means the entire sermon, every soaring, impossible-sounding command in it, is addressed not to people trying to earn their way in, but to people who have already been welcomed in for free, precisely because they knew they had nothing to offer. From that low door, the rest of the blessings unfold, and every one of them turns the world's scoreboard upside down. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted, not the untroubled, but the grieving. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Not the pushy and the powerful, but the gentle will end up owning everything. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the ones aching to be right with God, not the ones smugly certain they already are. Blessed are the merciful and the pure in heart and the peacemakers. And then the strangest blessing of all. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. The world hands out the word blessed to the wealthy and the comfortable and the applauded. Jesus hands it to the empty, the sorrowful, the gentle, the hungry, and the hated, because in his kingdom, a flourishing life is not measured by what you have gathered, but by what God is doing in you. The Beatitudes are not 8 assignments to complete. They are a photograph of the kind of person grace grows, and a promise that these people, who look like the losers of history, are the ones the future actually belongs to. Before he asks anything of these unlikely citizens, he tells them what they exist for. You are the salt of the earth, he says. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Salt is useless in the box. It has to be worked into the meat to stop the rot and bring out the flavor. Light is pointless under a basket. It has to be lifted up to fill the room. So the kingdom life is not a retreat from the world into a private holy huddle. It is a presence in the world, preserving what is decaying, seasoning what is bland, shining into what is dark, and doing it visibly enough that people trace the light back to God. These low-door people are not meant to hide. They are meant to change the flavor of everything around them. Then comes the question every listener would have been waiting for. What does all of this do to the law of Moses that our whole nation is built on? His answer is one of the hinges of the entire sermon. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, he says. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. He is not demolishing the old commandments. He is bringing them to the destination they were always headed toward. And then he lifts the bar to a dizzying height. Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. To his audience, that was almost absurd. The Pharisees were the most exacting rule keepers on earth. But he does not mean more rules, kept more rigidly. He means a righteousness that runs in a different direction entirely, down, into the heart, into the very place the external law could never reach, and God was always watching. He demonstrates it 6 times in a row, each one following the same pattern of taking a familiar command and driving it inward. The old word said, "Do not murder." And Jesus says, the commandment was never merely about the corpse on the ground. It was about the contempt in the heart, so that the man nursing anger against his brother has already broken it. The old word said, "Do not commit adultery." And Jesus says, it was never only about the act in the bedroom. The man who looks with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. He calls his people back to faithfulness in marriage against the casual divorce of his day. He tells them to be so truthful that they never need to swear an oath at all. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. He takes the ancient law of proportional justice, an eye for an eye, and calls his people past it to absorb an insult rather than return it. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And he climbs to the summit of the whole section with the hardest command in it. You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Because that is exactly how your Father in heaven behaves, sending sun and rain on the evil and the good alike. Feel what he is doing as those six pile up. He is deliberately making the standard impossible to keep. As long as the command is, "Don't kill," most of us can quietly congratulate ourselves. But once it reaches the anger simmering in the heart, the account is closed and every one of us is guilty. Once "Don't commit adultery" includes the wandering eye, no honest person walks away clean. He is dismantling, brick by brick, the comforting fiction that we are decent people who basically keep the rules. And he caps it with the sentence that ought to empty every room of its self-confidence. You therefore must be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Perfect, whole, complete, as flawless as God himself. That is not spite. It is diagnosis. It is designed to drop you, exhausted and honest at last, right back through the low door of the first Beatitude. Poor in spirit, hands empty, aware you could never manufacture this, which is the only posture in which grace can actually reach you. The impossible height of the standard is not there to make you strain harder. It is there to make you look up. Having reached beneath our actions to our hearts, he now reaches beneath our religion to our motives. And this section is where the devout begin to squirm. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, he warns. And then he takes the three most admired acts of piety in his world and shows how each one can be quietly corrupted by the hunger for an audience. When you give to the poor, he says, don't announce it. Don't let your left hand know what your right is doing. Give in secret. When you pray, don't post yourself on the street corner performing your holiness for passers-by. Go into your room, shut the door, and speak to the Father who is unseen. When you fast, don't wear a tragic, hollow-cheeked expression so everyone can admire your discipline. Wash your face, look ordinary, and keep it between you and God. One truth runs through all three, and it is both a warning and a relief. Every action of your life has one of two possible audiences, and you must choose which one you are playing to. Perform for people, and their applause is your entire paycheck. The transaction closes on the spot, and heaven owes you nothing further. Live before an audience of one, hidden from the crowd, and the Father who sees in secret becomes your reward. Kingdom righteousness is not only deeper than the Pharisees, it is quieter. It does not require a single witness. And right at the center of that teaching on prayer, he hands his people a model, the prayer we have called the Lord's Prayer for 2,000 years. And its shape is the whole kingdom in miniature. It opens not with our wants, but with the Father and his honor. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Then his agenda before ours. Your kingdom come, Your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Only after God's name and God's kingdom does it turn to us, and even then our requests stay small and daily. Give us this day our daily bread, enough for today, no hoarding, the posture of people who trust tomorrow to Him. Then the deepest need and the least deserved, forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Mercy received and mercy released, tied together in a single breath. And finally, protection. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In 6 short lines, he recenters an entire human heart around God's glory, God's kingdom, and a childlike dependence for bread, pardon, and rescue. Then he turns to the 2 great rivals that compete with God for the throne of a human life, money and worry. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, he says, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And then the sentence that explains why it matters so desperately. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He is not handing out budgeting tips. He is revealing a law of the soul, that the heart always migrates toward whatever it treasures, the way a compass swings toward north. Sink your life into what decays, and your heart decays with it. Anchor it to what is eternal, and your heart is tethered to heaven. He states it as a flat impossibility. No one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve God and money. Not should not, cannot. They are competing deities, and the throne has room for only one. And worry, he shows, is simply what it feels like to serve money as your master and lie awake wondering if it will hold. So he points at the birds, who plant nothing and are fed, and the wildflowers, dressed by God in a splendor beyond a king's wardrobe. And he asks the question that dissolves anxiety at the root. If your Father clothes the grass that is here today and burned tomorrow, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? And he seals it with the command that reorders every priority you have. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Quit chasing the provision. Chase the King. The provision follows. He moves next to how these citizens treat one another, opening with a line the whole world has memorized and misused. Judge not, that you be not judged. But he explains himself immediately, and it is not a ban on all moral discernment. It is a ban on the hypocritical kind, the eagle-eyed scrutiny of everyone else's faults by a person blind to their own. He makes it almost cartoonish, a man with a whole plank jutting out of his own eye, leaning in to tweeze a speck of sawdust from someone else's. First take the log out of your own eye, he says, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. The goal is not that you never help your brother. It is that you deal with yourself before you deal with him, that you come in humility instead of superiority. And knowing how impossibly high this whole life is, he immediately throws open a door of hope. Because none of it can be done in your own strength, so he tells them where the strength comes from. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. And he grounds the promise in the Father's own heart. If flawed human parents know how to give good gifts to their children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? The kingdom life is beyond you, so ask for it. The Father is not reluctant. And he compresses the entire moral vision of the sermon into one sentence small enough to carry in your pocket and vast enough to reshape a life. The line we call the Golden Rule. Whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Everything the whole law was ever reaching for, folded into a single principle a child can grasp. Treat people the way you would ache to be treated. Not merely refrain from harming them, actively do for them the good you would long for in their place. He could have ended there on a warm and quotable high. He does not. He ends with 4 warnings stacked one on top of another, and together they turn a beautiful sermon into a fork in the road. Because this teaching was never meant to be admired from a safe distance. It was meant to force a decision, and so he forces it. He sets 2 gates before them and 2 roads. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. He will not let anyone drift out of this sermon imagining the kingdom is a broad, comfortable highway that everyone eventually strolls onto. There are exactly 2 roads. The crowded, easy one does not arrive where it advertises. The road to life is a narrow gate that must be deliberately chosen and that few even locate. You cannot receive this teaching passively. It demands that you step off the wide road. He warns, second, about counterfeit teachers, wolves in sheep's clothing, and gives the one reliable test for spotting them. You will recognize them by their fruits, not by their eloquence, not by their crowds, not by their confident claims, by the actual fruit their lives and their teaching bear over time. Good trees and bad trees can look similar in leaf. You know them by what they produce. And the third warning is the most frightening thing in the whole sermon, perhaps in all of Jesus' recorded words. Not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, "Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name?" And then will I declare to them, "I never knew you. Depart from me." Let the horror of that register. These are not scoffers or pagans. These are people who called him Lord, who performed religious works, even miraculous ones, in his name. And he tells them he never knew them. Because the deciding thing was never the confession on the lips or the works of the hands. It was whether he knew them, whether there was a real relationship, a heart that truly belonged to him and did the Father's will out of love. A person can say every right word, do every right religious thing, and still be a total stranger to the King. The sermon that flung its doors open to the empty-handed poor in spirit closes by warning the full-handed religious achiever that busy hands are not the same as a known heart. And then the final picture, the one the whole sermon has been climbing toward. Everyone who hears these words and does them, Jesus says, is like a wise man who built his house on rock, and everyone who hears these words and does not do them is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. Here is the detail almost everyone skips. In the story, both men build. Both are builders. On a calm, clear day from the road, the 2 houses might look identical. Same walls, same roof, same paint. The difference is completely hidden until the weather turns. The rain fell and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. The very same storm strikes both, and one stood and one collapsed, and great was the fall of it. The storm did not create the difference between the houses. The storm exposed a difference that was there all along, buried where no one could see it, the foundation. And the line between the wise builder and the fool is not that one heard the sermon and the other didn't. Both heard every word. The difference is that one built his life on what he heard and the other only admired it, which means it is entirely possible to sit through this glorious sermon, to be moved by it, to quote its lines for the rest of your days, and still be the fool because you never laid a single stone of your actual life on it. Hearing is not building. Admiration is not a foundation. Step back now and see the whole mountain at once, because only from a distance do the pieces resolve into one image. The sermon opens at the low door. Poor in spirit, empty-handed, the entrance for those who know they have nothing. It flips every value the world lives by upside down. It drives beneath our behavior into our hearts, and beneath our religion into our motives, exposing that we are far more broken and far less good than we let ourselves believe, until the standard rises to the perfection of God Himself, and every honest listener runs out of excuses. It pulls our treasure and our anxiety off of money and re-anchors them in the Father who feeds the sparrows. It teaches us to pray, to give, to forgive, to seek, to treat others as we long to be treated, and it refuses, at the end, to let anyone remain a spectator. Narrow gate or wide road, good fruit or bad, known by him or a stranger to him, a house on rock or a house on sand. Choose. And here is the thing you cannot see until the very end, the truth that reorganizes the entire sermon. No human being has ever lived this. Not one. No one has ever been perfectly poor in spirit and pure in heart, perfectly free of anger and lust, perfectly loving toward enemies, perfectly indifferent to applause, perfectly trusting of the Father, except the man who preached it. Every line of this sermon is a description of Jesus Himself. He is not merely its teacher. He is its only living embodiment, the sole person who ever kept every syllable of it. And that transforms what you are meant to do with it. It was never a checklist shoved into your hands with the command, "Now earn your way in." It humbles you first, defeating your pride and dropping you at the low door. It points you to Christ, the one who fulfilled it flawlessly, and offers you His own righteousness as a gift you could never generate. And only then, from the inside, as His life takes root in yours, does it become a portrait of what He begins to grow in you, the mercy, the meekness, the purity, the hunger for God, the love that reaches even enemies. The life you could never climb up to becomes the fruit the King bears in a heart He has moved into. It was never a ladder. It was always a face, His, and the promise of what He will make of yours. You have almost certainly admired this sermon. Most people do. You have probably quoted it, maybe defended it against those who ignore it, maybe even set out at some sincere moment to live it. And if you are honest, you failed, the way everyone who has ever tried has failed. But hear how that failure was designed. It was not the sermon breaking down, it was the sermon working. It was built to run you to the end of your own strength, to strip away the illusion that you are good enough, and to leave you standing at the low door, poor in spirit at last, which is the only place the King's grace has ever been able to reach a person. And having brought you there, it asks the one question it was aiming at the whole time. Not did that inspire you, not do you agree, but what are you going to build your life on? Because a storm is coming for every house that has ever been raised. It comes for the wise and the foolish without discrimination. The rain does not pause to check your beliefs before it falls. And when it arrives, the only thing that will matter is what lies underneath. Whether you merely heard these words and admired them from the road, or whether you took them and the King who spoke them and sank the whole weight of your life onto the rock that cannot be moved. 2 houses, 1 hidden foundation, 1 storm that will tell the truth about both. If seeing the sermon whole, as one message from one mountain with one King at its center, did something a lifetime of scattered quotes never could, then hand it to someone who's admired these words for years without ever hearing them as a single voice, and let them stand at the foot of the mountain too. God bless you.